You should be ashamed of yourself, Megan. You walked away from this family, and now you show up here pretending to care while your sister is the one actually honoring our country's legacy. My mother, Patricia's voice echoed sharply across the illuminated ballroom of the Grand Oak Hotel. Exactly 102 guests, local politicians, prominent business leaders, military contractors, and high society donors, instantly stopped talking. Every single head turned in my direction, eyes heavy with judgment. I stood near the entrance in my crisp, tailored dress suit, holding a framed photograph of my late father. I was an active-duty Air Force intelligence officer, Captain Megan Miller. I had spent 8 years in high-stakes tactical intelligence, surviving brutal deployments, severe sleep deprivation, and high-threat environments. I'd driven 4 hours straight from base after an exhausting 48-hour shift just to attend this charity fundraiser organized in my late father's memory, a decorated combat pilot who died 2 years ago. Standing on the elevated stage under the spotlight was my younger sister, Lauren. She wore a stunning navy blazer with a glittering military-style pin, holding a microphone. "Mom is right," Lauren said into the microphone, her voice trembling with calculated, tearful emotion that looked so genuine it made my stomach churn. While Megan was off building her corporate career and ignoring our family calls, I've been working night and day with the Regional Veterans Outreach Program to raise money for wounded pilots in Dad's honor. Megan didn't even care enough to send $1 or make a single phone call to Dad when he was sick. A collective murmur of disgust swept through the 102 guests. A local city councilman near me shook his head, whispering to his wife, "How cold-hearted can a daughter be?" "Lauren, that's a complete lie," I said, stepping forward, my chest tightening with agonizing emotional pain. "I called Dad every single week from deployment. I sent my combat pay directly to—" "Enough lies, Megan," my mother interrupted loudly, stepping onto the stage beside Lauren and glaring at me with raw disgust. "Leave this room before you ruin Lauren's big night." The public humiliation cut deeper than any physical wound. Over 100 people were staring at me like I was a heartless monster. Overwhelmed with grief and public shame, I clutched my father's framed photo to my chest, turned around, and walked out into the cold night. The cool night air hit my face as I stood beside my car in the parking lot, my hands trembling violently against the cold steel of the driver's door. I leaned my head against the roof of the truck, fighting to catch my breath. The betrayal was crushing, but I was a trained intelligence officer. I knew how to compartmentalize pain. Buzz. My phone vibrated aggressively in my coat pocket. It was a text from an unknown local number. Unknown. "Don't drive away yet, Captain. Check the back seat of your truck. Someone slipped something through your cracked window while you were inside." My heart spiked. My intelligence training instantly kicked in. I scanned the dark parking lot, empty except for row after row of luxury cars. I slowly opened the rear door of my truck. Lying on the dark leather seat was a thick manila envelope with no name written on it. Before I could open it, my phone chimed again. A notification popped up from a major regional news station's social media page. Lauren had just gone live on Facebook from inside the ballroom. Over 2,000 local viewers were watching. "We are so humbled by the community's support tonight. Despite my sister, Megan, showing up to cause a scene and trying to take credit for our veteran campaign, we've raised over $150,000 for wounded pilots in memory of Colonel Arthur Miller. Please share this stream to keep supporting our heroes." They weren't just humiliating me in private, they were broadcasting a lie to the entire city, weaponizing my dead father's honor to build Lauren's public reputation. My hands shook as I tore open the manila envelope inside my truck. Inside was a stack of printed bank statements, legal forms, and an official military document bearing the seal of the Department of Veterans Affairs. As I scanned the first page under the dim cabin light, my breath caught in my throat. The documents showed that the Regional Veterans Outreach Program Lauren was claiming to run didn't belong to her at all. In fact, the program had been legally registered 3 years ago under my late father's name, but what made my blood run cold was the signature on the recent grant applications. Someone had been using my active duty military service number, my security clearance credential, and my forged signature to apply for federal veteran grants worth over $250,000. My sister hadn't just built a reputation on a lie, she had secretly stolen my military identity to secure federal funds. If the Department of Defense audited those grants, I wouldn't just lose my military rank, I would face federal prosecution and prison time for fraud. Who had slipped these documents into my truck, and why now? I didn't have time to process the mystery before my phone rang. It was my military supervisor, Major Henderson, calling from base. "Captain Miller?" His voice came through cold and urgent. "Where are you right now?" "Sir, I'm 4 hours out, attending my father's memorial charity event," I answered, forcing my voice to stay steady. "We have a situation," Major Henderson said. "The Air Force Office of Special Investigations just received an anonymous tip claiming you've been running an unauthorized civilian charity and leveraging your security clearance for personal financial gain. An investigator is already en route to your location. If you are involved in this, Megan, your clearance is suspended effective immediately, and you will be recalled to base under escort." My chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. Lauren and my mother hadn't just stolen my identity, they had anticipated I might fight back, so they preemptively reported me to military investigators to lock me down and destroy my credibility before I could speak. If I fled back to base, the story would look like a confession. If I stayed, I faced immediate military detention. Fear and self-doubt threatened to paralyze me. I was completely alone, facing the destruction of my military career, my family, and my father's memory. I sat in the dark truck, forcing myself to take slow, controlled, tactical breaths. Identify the threat, assess the intelligence, execute the countermeasure. Suddenly, my passenger door opened. I flinched, reaching instinctively toward my hip, but froze when I saw who stepped into the cab. It was Marcus, my sister Lauren's fiancé. He was a quiet, hardworking civilian engineer who had always kept his distance during family gatherings. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he pulled a small USB thumb drive from his pocket. "Marcus?" I whispered in shock. "What are you doing here?" "I was the one who left the envelope in your back seat," Marcus said, his voice cracking with intense guilt. "And I was the one who sent you the text." I stared at him, stunned. "Why?" "Because I can't do this anymore, Megan," Marcus said, looking down at his hands. "For the last 6 months, I thought Lauren was really doing this for your dad, but last night, I accidentally found her laptop open. She and your mother haven't just been using your military identity to get grants, they've been redirecting 90% of those raised funds into a private offshore holding account to pay off your mother's massive gambling debts and fund Lauren's luxury lifestyle." A wave of sickness washed over me. They didn't give a single dollar to wounded pilots? "Not a cent," Marcus confessed, his eyes filling with tears. "And when they found out you were coming tonight, Lauren panicked. She knew you had access to military databases and might catch on, so she filed the false OSI report against you an hour ago to have you arrested before you could check the records. Everything is on this drive, the bank routing numbers, the forged signatures, the emails between your mother and the offshore brokers." I took the thumb drive, my mind spinning as the true scope of the betrayal crystallized. My father hadn't died leaving behind an empty legacy. Before his death, he had discovered what my mother was doing. He had set up a secret protective trust to safeguard his pension and military honors, placing it under the custody of his oldest military brother-in-arms, a retired master sergeant named Frank Harris, a legendary veteran in our hometown who had gone completely radio silent after Dad died. My mother and sister weren't just greedy, they were desperate. They needed my military credentials because my father had explicitly cut them out of his military estate due to their corruption. They had been draining my identity because it was the only key left to access the federal veteran networks my father built. "Marcus," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "are you willing to stand up and say this publicly?" Marcus took a deep, shaky breath, looked toward the brightly lit hotel ballroom, and nodded. "Your dad saved my life when I was a kid, Megan. I won't let them drag his name or yours through the mud any longer." 10 minutes later, the double doors of the Grand Oak Ballroom swung open. The gala was in full swing. Lauren was standing near a podium on stage, holding a glass of champagne, laughing with the city councilman and several wealthy donors. My mother stood beside her, beaming with pride as guests lined up to hand over tax-deductible donation checks. I walked straight down the center aisle. I wasn't wearing my civilian suit anymore. I had changed into my immaculate Air Force service dress uniform, my captain bars and intelligence badges shining under the chandeliers. Marcus walked silently 2 paces behind me. The chatter in the room ground to a sudden halt. "Megan?" My mother gasped, her smile instantly souring into rage. She rushed to the edge of the stage. "How dare you come back in here, and in a uniform you don't even deserve to wear after how you treated your family? Security, get her out." 2 venue security guards stepped forward, but I stopped them with a single, sharp military hand command and a glare so intense they hesitated. "Mother, Lauren," I said, my voice echoing clearly through the microphone system as I stepped up to a floor podium. "You told these 102 guests that I didn't care about Dad, that I never contributed a dollar, and that Lauren built this veteran charity out of love." Lauren sneered, stepping up to her microphone. "It's the truth. You're just embarrassed because everyone finally sees you for the selfish person you are." "Then let's look at the truth together," I replied calmly. I plugged Marcus's bum drive directly into the audio-visual presentation console connected to the 2 massive projector screens flanking the stage. Before my mother or sister could react, the projector screens flickered to life. Instead of the memorial slideshow of my father, the screen displayed high-resolution scans of the federal grant applications, showing my forged signature alongside Lauren's personal email address. Right below it, the system displayed the live banking ledger of the Veterans Outreach Program. A collective, horrified gasp rippled through the 102 guests. The ledger showed $150,000 flowing in from civilian donors, and within 48 hours of every event, equal amounts flowing directly out into an offshore account titled Eleanor Miller Luxury Escrow. "What is the meaning of this?" the city councilman shouted, standing up from his table, his face red with anger. "It's a fake. She hacked the screens. She's an intelligence officer. She forged all of it." Lauren screamed into her microphone, her voice dropping all composure, turning shrill and hysterical. "She didn't forge anything," Marcus' voice boomed as he stepped onto the stage, taking the microphone from Lauren's trembling hand. "Lauren?" gasped Marcus, backing away as if she had been struck. "What are you doing?" "Telling the truth," Marcus said firmly, turning to the audience. "I helped manage the event software. I watched Eleanor and Lauren transfer $45,000 of tonight's donations into an offshore account 20 minutes before the event started. They used Megan's active duty credentials without her knowledge to pass federal security checks." My mother's face went completely ghost white. She grabbed the podium to steady herself, her eyes darting frantically around the room as the wealthy donors began to whisper in absolute horror and disgust. Before the chaos could devolve into shouting, a heavy wooden cane struck the floor near the entrance with a loud, resounding crack. The crowd parted. Walking slowly down the aisle was an elderly man in a vintage, faded Air Force service cap covered in combat ribbons. He walked with a heavy limp, supported by a cane, but his posture was as rigid as iron. It was Master Sergeant Frank Harris, my father's oldest combat wingman, the veteran who had gone silent for 2 years.
Behind him walked a tall man in a dark suit holding a federal badge, the OSI special investigator who had been sent to arrest me. The room went dead silent. Master Sergeant Harris stopped at the base of the stage, looking up at my mother and sister with cold, ancient disappointment. "Patricia," Master Sergeant Harris said, his weathered voice carrying across the quiet room. "Arthur knew what you were doing long before he passed. He knew about the gambling, and he knew Lauren was following right into your footsteps." He pulled a sealed, yellowed envelope from his coat pocket and handed it directly to the OSI investigator beside him. "This is Colonel Arthur Miller's original sworn affidavit, witnessed by military legal officers before his death," Harris announced to the entire ballroom. He explicitly stripped his family of any right to use his name, rank, or estate for charitable solicitations, and placed his entire legacy under military trust to protect his daughter, Megan. The OSI investigator opened the folder, reviewed the document, and looked up at my mother and sister. "Eleanor and Lauren Miller, you are under federal investigation for identity theft of an active duty officer, wire fraud, and grand larceny of federal grant funds." Two state troopers stepped through the side doors, their cuffs jingling quietly in the silent room.
The collapse of their facade was absolute and instantaneous. Lauren burst into hysterical tears, dropping to her knees on the stage, grabbing at Marcus's jacket. "Marcus, please, tell them it's a mistake. I did it for us." Marcus stepped back, pulling his ring off his finger and dropping it onto the stage beside her. "No, Lauren, you did it for yourself." My mother tried to push past the troopers, screaming at the crowd. "You don't understand. We are the family of a hero. You can't do this to us." The same 102 prominent guests who had looked at me with disgust minutes ago now spat words of utter revulsion at my mother and sister as the state troopers escorted them down the aisle in handcuffs. The city councilman immediately ordered the hotel staff to freeze all event funds and return every donation check to the attendees. The OSI investigator walked up to me, removed his hat, and offered a crisp, respectful salute. "Captain Miller, your clearance is fully restored. I apologize for the misunderstanding. You are entirely cleared of all allegations." I returned the salute, my chest rising as a massive weight of anxiety and fear lifted off my shoulders. "Thank you, sir." As the ballroom emptied and the police cruisers pulled away into the rainy night, I stood alone on the hotel patio, holding my father's framed photograph. Master Sergeant Harris walked up beside me, leaning on his cane, watching the rain fall against the pavement. "I'm sorry I stayed away so long, kiddo," Harris said softly, his voice full of old warmth. "Your dad made me promise to only step in when they pushed things too far. He wanted to protect you, even from beyond the grave." A single tear escaped my eye, tracing down my cheek, not of grief, but of profound relief and honor. "He always had my back, didn't he?" "Always," Harris smiled, gently patting my shoulder. "And so do we. You did good tonight, Captain. You defended his honor with pure discipline." You cannot fix toxic family members by sacrificing your own integrity to cover their flaws. For years, I stayed quiet, enduring their subtle cruelty and cold dismissal because I thought maintaining peace was my duty as a daughter. I thought if I worked harder and stayed silent, they would eventually respect my service and love me for who I was. But selfish, narcissistic people do not see your silence as grace. They see it as an opportunity to exploit you. They will happily burn your reputation, steal your identity, and destroy your hard-earned honor just to feed their own greed. True strength isn't about quietly enduring abuse from people who share your blood. True strength is having the tactical discipline to stand firm in the truth, protect what is sacred, draw an unbreakable line in the sand, and let the truth do the fighting for you.